Welcome to the Pitchwerks Podcast. I'm Scot McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks Podcast.
Yeah, I mean, control is a huge factor in the employee versus 1099, and you want to figure that out of, how in your business plan at the beginning stages, that's a critical thing you got to analyze. Like, are we going to need employees, or are we going to can we sub this out? Can we contract this
to a real independent company?
Yes, with insurance.
All right, it's Wednesday morning, and that means it's time to work on honing your pitch. This is the Pitchwerks Podcast. I am Scot McTaggart, and I am very glad to have you here. Today's guest is Shawn Giewont. We've brought him in from Erie. He drove in. He's going to tell you about what kind of mistakes people make handling funds, handling their long-range accounting plans, getting ready for taxes, that sort of thing. If you've got a startup, if you're thinking about having your own business, you're trying to pitch somebody on the idea of what you're working on, definitely give Shawn a listen here. Before we jump into the interview, obviously we have to do the normal stuff. I got to remind you that there's a website. I know you know, but it's my job to remind you. Pitchwerks.com, Pitchwerks. You're going to find us out there on the internet, and then you're going to go to the social destinations, and you're going to engage with us there. A lot of times I forget to mention LinkedIn. We're kind of big on LinkedIn. Be sure to check us out there. Also, the usuals, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and no, we're still really not engaged on Snapchat. But if you go to any of those places, you'll find us. Pitchwerks, Pitchwerks. One last thing before we get started. I need your rating, reviewing skills. Please donate them for just a few seconds while you fill out your iTunes, Google Play. This is how the Pitchwerks Podcast strikes me. Is it a 5-star program? Is it a 1-star program? Is this the greatest thing I've ever heard? Is it a terrible, steaming pile of... Anyway, here's Shawn. We're going to talk a little bit about the finances of businesses that are brand new and early stage. You know what? I got to tell you something. The fact that you got in your car and drove down here, I really appreciate that.
It's what a man's got to do, Scott.
Sometimes you got to do.
Yeah, well, you hit me up, doing this Pitchwerks thing. I was like, I'm all over that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, you're actually kind of really hip deep in the startup community already.
Yeah.
We should probably make sure everybody knows you came in from Erie.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
And I was actually born there. I spent the first 10 years of my life up there in the the Erie area, so I know how long of a trip that can be.
I came in combat boots.
Dude, digging the boots.
Dude, it's a little different world up there, big time.
Is it bad right now?
Oh, it's pretty snowy. Not bad, but it was sunny the whole way, so pretty good trip.
I think I got some hotels.com points you can use if you want.
Oh, hook it up.
Yeah, that's great. But legit, I mean, I really appreciate you coming in. That's a long trip.
For sure.
And I really like the idea of getting into what it is that people don't necessarily understand when they start this whole startup, like I'm going to do even a side hustle, right? Like they don't understand necessarily what kind of trouble they're getting into. But before we do that, give us a quick intro and pitch us on what you're working on. That's sort of the hallmark thing. Everybody who comes through has got to throw a pitch down. Let's get yours out of the way.
Well, I'm a CPA, so we do the whole thing. Accounting, tax solutions. We pretty much provide anything you need for, accounting, taxes for your business, that kind of thing. But we take it a step further. I take a proactive approach with my clients. Feel them out. Feel where they want to go. What's a 5-year? What's a 10-year? And, we utilize all the resources we can to help make it happen for them.
Very nice. I like the compactness.
Yeah.
So, you're 26 years old, right?
28.
28.
Got to be 29.
Sorry. I actually didn't bring any notes with me, so I'm trying to do that from memory. That's my fault.
There you go.
You're still a young buck, though, especially in your space.
Trying to get it going.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you're going to deliver that pitch, you've kind of already got a little bit of. I don't want to say that other people have an advantage over you,
Right.
but you have to at least come into a situation when you're pitching somebody on your services
Right.
that your professional experience needs to shine through in your pitch.
Absolutely.
And you've only got so many seconds to do it, right?
Right. That does come up quite a bit, or I actually try and vet that out and explain that to people straight up. A prospective client, they're going to know I'm younger. I try to keep the beard sometimes, but, so I look a little older.
Right,
but
yeah.
I try and, make sure that they know that they're dealing with a professional. Through and through, we got them covered. I have a ton of experience in corporate tax, whatever we're talking about, retirement plans, you name it. The regular CPA stuff, we got you covered. So,
Are there any approaches that just don't work for you?
as far as...
Well, when you're trying to present, let's say you're standing around in one of these like business mixers, right? These networking events. Like
Sure.
here we have the Pittsburgh Business Times. Just this past Monday, they had their book of lists reception, which is literally like 300 people standing around trying to balance being polite and outgoing and whatnot with like a fear of approaching people. You can see the tension in the room, right?
Absolutely.
So you're in that environment. Somebody comes up to you and says, "Hi, I'm Al, and I sell aluminum siding." And you say,
"Hey, Al, how's it going? Shawn Giewont, CPA. Nice to meet you. So you sell aluminum siding?
Right,
What do you
exactly.
do with it? You know
right?
what I mean?
You're taking it, you're asking them about them.
Absolutely.
But now they say that pitch didn't work. Is there one doesn't work for you, or is there an area you try to stay away from?
Well, for me, I guess like what works for me is I just try to be genuine.
Yeah.
I try to come across, and I am, I try to put the client first, whoever I'm dealing with, I put them first.
Mm-hmm.
I just like to be genuine and get their feelings on, what's their concerns, what are their needs.
But there have to be some bullet points you're trying to remember to hit. Yeah. You've got to have sort of like a brand story you like to spin, right? It's a firm with these clients, maybe. Some people like to name drop. We've been around this long. We're located in this convenient location.
Yeah.
Which bullet points are you hitting?
So I usually hit, we were started back in 1978
Yeah.
by my partner at Brink. Practice grew.
I was a year old.
There you go. So, the practice developed, accounting, taxes, the standard host of public accounting firm services. But my story, I like to tell my story because it helps me to connect with entrepreneurs, startup people a little bit. Now, you wouldn't say like a CPA entrepreneur,
I disagree, but go ahead.
Yeah, we can get into that in a little bit. But
how about this? Once you've been inside of a startup, you understand how much financial illiteracy exists in the startup community.
Yes.
And that's really why you've been invited here. But please go ahead.
I knew the partner. It was Brink and Shellhammer. I knew the partner for a long time. I went to church with him. I've known his family. And, he was like, he didn't have a succession plan. Like a lot of businesses, they get to near the end of their career and they're like, what am I going to do? He knew I was studying accounting. And so I was like, he talked to me and he said, "Hey, I really don't have any family that wants to take this over. If you go to college, get licensed, would you be interested?" And
Right.
I said, "Heck yeah." I went to work for him, real small firm, less than 20 people, got licensed. It was just like the perfect time for him to exit, for me to buy in. And that's exactly what happened.
Patience is a virtue.
It is.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
All right. So now I understand you're doing a lot of work with a co-working space up there in Erie.
Yeah, Radius Cowork.
Well, we got to make sure that they get proper credit, right? Because that's how I reached you.
Absolutely.
I was talking to some of the folks up there. They said, you got to talk to Shawn.
And I got to give a shout out to the co-founders, Bill Scholes and Sean Fedorko. They're kind of running the day-to-day up there.
Yeah, it was Shawn that told me to talk to you.
Yeah. So they had an idea for this event. Started out like, what if we had an attorney come in, like one random day a month, and they'll be there. And then, yeah, that's a good idea. A lot of people here need legal services, but they don't know what the heck they're doing.
There's just as much legal illiteracy in the startup community.
Absolutely. And then that was good. They had that happen. They were like, what about what about accounting?
They're all going to need to handle money.
Absolutely. And none of them were like, I don't know what to do. Like I'm trying to knock together a Excel spreadsheet, and keep my receipts in one space.
Hope that I'm somewhere near the target that the government wants me to hit in terms of documentation.
Yeah, a lot of people are just shooting in the dark as far as what they need to keep and what they're doing and with their whole business. So I went in and I was like, Shawn pitched that to me. He was like, "Hey, you want to come down and just be available to talk to people?" And I told him, I was like, "You mean to tell me that I can go to a space where there's a bunch of independent business people just sitting around working, and I can just talk to them?"
Yeah.
Like just talk to all these leads. Like I just saw, so there's like 10, 20 leads there, just, business people, freelancers just sitting around doing their work, and they can just ask me questions.
And they desperately want to stay out of tax law problems.
Right.
And they want to know whether or not they're actually thinking about money correctly.
Right.
You're performing a public service.
Yeah. So we did that. I went down, was available to all these entrepreneurs. They asked tons of questions, and I was happy to answer them.
Yeah.
And over time, from that first day, I picked up clients the first day.
I'm sure of it.
Just talking to them, seeing what their pain points were, their triggers, what's just dragging them down in their business, and got started helping them with that. And so that event grew and grew and grew, and now it's kind of like a branded event, stated, every month, a month and a half, 2 months, there will be coffee and consultations, they call it, at Radius. And now we're up to like 10 professionals. People come in, they can talk to lawyers, bankers, web dev people, search engine people, SEO professionals, marketers, you name it.
With all respect to a lot of those people, though, money is definitely going to change hands, right? Yeah. Like I'm not trying to cut the legs out from underneath any of those fine professionals, but if it's a business, there's money. That's what makes it a business.
Absolutely.
And one thing I'm fascinated by is this weird resistance that certain people have. And when I say certain people, I think they may be the majority of talking to an accountant, because I think they're worried that it is expensive beyond its return on investment. Do you find that to be true?
That is absolutely true. A lot of times people just are afraid to, when you're starting out, you have no money.
Right.
Nothing for, even to buy bread, you know. You're pouring everything into your business, all your time, your sweat, your blood, your tears. But where's the money for professional help? But that's the exact time people need it. They need to get set up the right way, get their businesses established, so they can, so they can thrive and excel into the future.
Do you find that what I said about there being resistance to it has any sort of root? Like, is there like a belief that the accountant needlessly complicates it or costs too much? Like, what is it when you finally get their defenses down, what is it that cuts through where they finally realize they need to hire somebody like you to help them get this situated?
There's definitely a concern with taxes. So like, I'm a tax guy, I'm cranking taxes right now. I got up at 4 a.m.
Oh no. You're beat for the next couple months.
I don't see sunlight.
I can't believe you're here.
But it's what you got to do when you're in business for yourself. And,
you got to promote.
That's the thing.
Now, I have to believe there's certain areas that are a lot more complex.
Absolutely.
Which ones are those? I'm sorry.
It's all relative.
It's a scattergun question that I came up with sort of on the fly, because as I was hearing you talk, right, I'm thinking about if I accept this worldview, right, I say, you know what, we need to get an accountant in as soon as possible. Then I start letting doubt creep in, and I start letting it decide what business I'm in.
Well, for me, tough, capitally intensive businesses are always at the top of the list.
So like somebody needs special machines or something.
Yeah. Over the road trucking, that's a major one. I mean, they have to get their product to their customer on time, huge capital requirements. Labor force is a lot of times unavailable or unwilling to meet the demands that business, needs to be successful. So capitally intense, manufacturing, that's a tough one. Supply chain issues, delivering your product to customers, maybe internationally. There could be international tax implications. But one area that I really find struggles is like, hey, we're raising capital.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best way?
I was definitely getting there with you.
Right. I mean, where do we get it? Do we find some wealthy individuals that get what we're doing? That's a common route, or even,
that game's gotten so complex. Very quickly, you go from someone who is an expert in a field to being someone who is decidedly not an expert in finance, and you're the same person with the same title. It's just hours apart.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and it's tough to know for startup. It's tough to know what's going to be best long term, because they're formulating a plan. They might not even know if they're going to last 5 years. What kind of solution do they need to get? How big do they want to be? And those are the kinds of questions I try to help them answer.
How deeply involved should my accounting people be in that initial business plan?
Sometimes I think the lack of prep at the beginning, without doing that, just mental rigor to get ready for, the actual bones of your business. What are you going to charge for your product and or service? What are you going to offer? If we're talking about using coworking as an example, are you going to offer coffee to the people that are there? What's that going to cost? What kind of budget? I mean, how many people are even interested?
And you also have to think about, when is the money going to arrive to pay for those things? Because, it's nice to get a $25,000 grant from a local development corporation, or a grant issuing agency, something like that. But I have the cash flow conversation with people a lot. And this is outside my area of expertise, so it's a really uncomfortable conversation. But people say, well, I just want to have the best. That's not an answer.
Right.
The best means that you need to have the cash for it. And I don't mean in the upfront grant. Money for services then gets translated to payments to vendors, and then whatever is left over goes to that coffee. Sometimes people pause the show and then come back to it. Just reminding you, we're talking to Shawn Giewont of Brink and Giewont. So, not getting people not getting your accounting folks involved in the business plan, the initial business plan, is a fairly large potential vulnerability. What other mistakes do people make?
I see a lot of issue in how to formulate their legal structure. I'm not a lawyer.
Right.
I don't have a law background, but getting set up the right way from my perspective and just my experience, that is the most important thing. One of the most important things.
Both my accountant and my lawyer had opinions when we went LLC.
Yeah.
Luckily, they agreed with one another. That would have been really uncomfortable. But I remember thinking how odd it was that my accountant had such strong opinions. Yeah. Why is that?
We are the CPA is, you see him every year. You got to get your taxes done. You're probably getting ready to call your CPA now. It's like,
well, not until you leave.
Coming up. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you'll call me. So, you're getting all that. The CPA sees you every year. They're going to get your taxes. They're looking at the books and that kind of thing. Or maybe you're saying, hey, this year I'm going to be starting something new. And then, your CPA might say, oh, what are you going to do? It's like, oh, I'm going to do a podcast or whatever. Or I'm going to start this. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to just start something. Immediately, we start to think about, okay, what's the risk?
Right. Have to.
What's going to be the barrier to entry?
You've seen so
Where's
many
the money going to come from?
So everyone loves to quote how many new businesses go dead within a year, within 5 years. They love to quote these numbers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of times it's because, let's
like
be honest.
9 and 10 businesses fail in the first 5 years.
They don't want their family and friends to be disappointed when things don't turn out, because you have to be a little bit good, a little bit lucky, a little bit well-timed. Right?
You got to have every little piece of that. You have to have it. No one ever can create a successful business without a little bit of luck, with a little bit of just rigor, elbow grease putting into the mix, and just getting it done.
So people love to spread those numbers, right? I think it's 95% of all in 5 years.
Yeah.
Have made their way to the graveyard. So yeah, I can see everybody being sort of risk oriented.
Right.
Do you see people making mistakes as far as employees and and independent contractors, because it feels like everyone tries to shove everybody into 1099 agreements these days.
Every day.
Every day.
I run across that every day. People think there's a such thing as a 1099 employee.
Right.
I hear that at least 2 times a week.
It's amazing.
Doesn't exist.
It happens so often in conversation, though. They go, oh, they're all 1099s.
Yeah, absolutely. But
because you've memorized the number of the form does not make you right.
Absolutely. There's a lot of space in between doing what's right and doing what's easy.
Like Uber, I believe, tried to treat all those
yeah.
drivers as independent contractors,
Yes.
and they got slapped pretty hard for it, if I'm right.
I believe they're still litigating that whole case. I think in California, I believe.
Right.
They have a lot of stuff going on.
Because they had
Uber's
so
got
much
big
control.
trouble.
They had a lot of control, and it wasn't so much an independent contracting environment.
Right.
But what else should we be looking out for there?
Yeah, I mean, control is a huge factor in the employee versus 1099, and you want to figure that out of how in your business plan at the beginning stages. That's a critical thing you got to analyze. Like, are we going to need employees, or are we can we sub this out? Can we contract this
To a real independent company?
Yes, with insurance, with their own advertising, with their own. They're going to bill you. You can't call someone a 1099 when, they give you their hours for the week and you stroke them a check on Tuesday. You know, it just doesn't work that way. You got to there has to be a separation of control from the business and from the contractor.
Am I wrong in thinking that the only reason people want a 1099 force is because they're getting out of one half of the payroll tax?
It's a little bit more than that.
Okay.
They're getting out of the payroll tax, but you're also getting out of workers' comp.
Got it.
And like in Pennsylvania, you're getting out of Pennsylvania unemployment. You're getting out of a lot of issues if you have a contractor.
Yeah.
But having a real contractor, that's a problem that most people have when they're trying to play that game.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. I mean, if you have any control over the services that they're doing for you,
yeah,
most likely you're going to fail that test. And there can be, I've been involved in a lot of like unemployment audits. Most people that don't have that separation, they lose. They don't get. Most people that are in that situation, maybe you're having an audit where there's an issue with, contractor versus employee. 9 times out of 10, they can't justify them being a subcontractor.
Yeah, I'm really glad this is you solving these problems, buddy. All right. I don't want to get involved in your world.
Something to do.
I want to keep hammering out on how it is that people sell themselves and present ideas. I'm going to stick in my lane if that's all good with you.
That's good with me.
Where is your firm going next? What is the future?
It's a good question. How big's Ernst & Young?
Pretty friggin' big is the answer to that question.
No. Honestly, I am looking to lead our firm into a prominent major regional firm.
Yeah.
Now, that could take 5 years. It could take 10.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to increase our client base, increase our service offerings, and serve clients all the better along the way.
Now, I got to call you out. You said that could take 5 years. That could take 10, right?
Right.
Obviously, there's a lot of competition out there.
Sure.
There are an awful lot of people out there who are always trying to, A, disrupt markets which already exist, B, compete better than the competition that already is in those markets. Sure. So how do you get confidence that 10 years would be enough?
CPA firms have been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
They rely on referrals most of the time. You do have some firms starting to dip ever so slightly into the pond of social media. But, CPAs were conservative. I'm a conservative guy.
Right.
Most of the time. But
I heard you're in a rock band. I'm not sure I believe that conservative thing.
You got a guitar in here. I'll play it for you.
There you go.
But no, yeah, I am in a rock band. So, that's what makes me different. I'm into doing what's super efficient for the client. It keeps costs down. I don't need to sit and have a meeting with somebody in my office, just the way you would normally do it. I have some clients in Denver I've never even met and probably never will. Face to face.
That definitely is different than the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are you considering any acquisition?
All the time.
You're just going to do it, a little bit of column A and a little bit column B, and you're just going to see how it plays out. But you're really growth oriented.
Absolutely, 100% growth oriented at this stage. All the while, making sure we grow at a smart rate. And what I mean by smart is, I don't want to grow too fast. Now, we do have a fast growth rate for our firm, and we've been crushing it the past 2 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But
you're trying to grow smart.
Yes.
Obviously, there are a lot of different risks in the water. What's the biggest threat?
The biggest threat is growing, just growing too quickly, building those relationships, but then not taking care of them. Yeah. I'm all about building relationships with clients. That's my number one thing is I try and put the client first, try and meet their needs and just build strong personal relationships.
How long does a client typically stay with their accounting firm?
Most people stay with their accounting firms a long time. It's not like a one and done transactions, H&R Block, general tax prep place, you might have a little more turnover, but typically, at least I see with my clients, we have a long-term relationship. Some clients have been with our firm for like 30 years.
I've got probably 9 in with the accountant that handles my LLC
exactly.
and whatnot. And I've referred him probably to 5 different, I don't know that they all went with him, but we'll say 5 different potential clients.
Nice.
So if somebody wants to reach out to you, how would they do that?
A great way to reach out to me, you can check us out on our website at brinkgiewont.com.
That's BRINKGIEWONT, if I'm correct, at least.
Yep, that's correct, .com. Or you can shoot me an email at sgiewont@brinkgiewont.com.
All right, that's going to do it for this week. I hope you appreciate the insight. I know, sometimes people don't really want to talk about finance. It's hard to look things right in their face and admit that you're not as conversant on the finance aspect, the tax aspects, what decisions you can make, and what impacts they might have. You have to have the right product. You have to have the right attitude. You have to have luck. And a little bit of good advice goes a long way as well. So thanks to Shawn from Brink and Giewont for coming in. I'm going to take off now. We'll catch up with you in about 7 days.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com, pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, PITCHWERKS.